All right. Well, hello. This is Professor Karen Rogers from the University of St. Thomas in Minneapolis. And I was asked if I would respond to several questions about what giftedness is, what parents can do to assist a child who might be gifted, what teachers can do, what does our research tell us we should do for these children in school, and what has the No Child Left Behind Act in the United States done to gifted education in particular? Has it been positive or has it been negative? I'll do my best to address all these questions, and I hope I will clear up a few ambiguities, perhaps, that we have in the field. I was first asked to define giftedness, and as many of you are aware, there are almost as many definitions of giftedness as there are people who are interested in gifted children. So it has not ever been defined fully, I don't believe. I think that Francois Gagné from the University of Quebec in Montreal has come the closest to a good, solid definition of giftedness, but we must also include talent as a part of that definition. You cannot define giftedness without defining talent. They're two concepts that are related and yet separate, but both apply to children who are either capable or are performing well beyond the regular population in some domain of ability or field of endeavor. I have given Roya an example of the model, which maybe she can share with you as an appendix to this particular video. If you look at the Gagné model, on the left-hand side is what he calls giftedness, which for him and for me is one's natural ability, what one is born with. And in order to be called gifted, we're talking about a comparatively rare, high amount of this potential. Often it's that raw ability to do something. We may not see it as performance, but we know that the child has the capability of doing it if the child were addressed educationally in some way. So it's that raw potential that a child might bring to school or the parents might see even before the child begins school. In the middle of this model, Gagné talks about what he calls the catalysts. And part of those catalysts are the things that will either allow this giftedness, this natural ability to be developed into performance, or will work against that development of high performance. And some of those things are personal, such as one's motivation level, whether or not one has some kind of a disability. One can be fully capable of doing things, but perhaps have a learning difficulty or an attention issue that really works against the development of that particular ability into talent. There are also environmental catalysts, such as whether or not the school thinks that this is important to develop. If they don't, we may not see that natural ability develop. And if they do, we have a good chance that that natural ability will be developed into performance. Likewise, the family has something to do with it, how much they work on the development or work against the development of giftedness, heaven forbid, but sometimes there are situations that occur where it becomes impossible. But we have all of these catalysts that can either work for the child or against the child. And over on the right-hand side of this model is what is called talentedness or talent. And what this is a comparatively high degree, rare degree of creative, transformational performance in a field of endeavor, whether that field were mathematics, whether it was technology, whether it was an athletic domain. We see this extraordinary performance. And when we talk about both gifts and talents, we're talking about beyond the regular population. So both of these are comparatively rare and very, very high, whether it's capability or giftedness or performance. So there we are with a definition. Now, why is it important to make these distinctions? I think it is because our goal in education is to get all these kids who have potential to the point where their potential has been fully developed into this high performance or talent. And that means that as we develop our programs for learners with gifts and talents, that we need two different kinds of services. We need gifted services in which we are shaping that potential, that natural ability into a field or into a domain where the child seems to have the most potential, helping that child recognize where their interests and passions are so that their catalysts get engaged and they ultimately are able to perform. But we also know that many children come to school performing 2 or 3 grade levels above what their age or their grade placement might tell us. And for those kids, we need to start at that very advanced level for them in what I would call talent development services. So again, I think this particular set of definitions for giftedness and talentedness actually helps direct what our gifted and talent development program needs to be in schools. So there I go with a definition, and I will come back to that in a few minutes in terms of what our research-based practices are for the development of gifts and talents. But my second question dealt with what do parents need to do to assist their child? And I think there are 4 ways that parents can help their children develop the gifts and talents that are in front of them. The first is that parents need to find a way to collect information on their child. They need a full record of how that child has done in school once the child does enter school, but also what the child does outside of school. Are there enrichment experiences? Are there museums that the child goes to? Are there art lessons that the child takes or music lessons? What kinds of things are being done both inside and outside of school to develop the gifts and talents in front of them? So a way to kind of do that whole collection. Now, schools have test scores and they have marks for these students, but the parent is the one that really has the cumulative evidence. An individual teacher can go in and see what happened the year before. There usually are student records, but only the parent will have the very comprehensive picture of what kind of growth has occurred over time for this child. So that's the first kind of information. A second kind of information is to assess the child's learning strengths and preferences. In what areas is the child able to learn most easily? Those may be the first services that a school needs to offer the child. Let's start with their strengths and work through their strengths as we develop those gifts into talent. And likewise, the preferences. We may have a child who has extraordinary capability in mathematical reasoning, but has no interest in mathematics. Well, if we give the mathematics services, it may just fall on deaf ears, so to speak. So we need to look at what the child's preferences are, how they prefer to learn, what their interests are, what their attitudes are in these domains of ability where we see this strong capability, and work from there in terms of developing a program for them. The parent would also need to want to collect information about the child's passions and interests, because that will influence whether or not the child takes advantage of what kinds of services they are offered both at school and at home. And likewise, the parent should collect information about attitudes about learning. How do they like to learn? Do they like to learn? And about the different subject areas that they're taught in school. Likewise, the parent should assess what the child would like to learn. So they may be extraordinary in science, but because they are doing all kinds of science experiments at home, what they want to learn when they go to school may not deal with science at all because they're being challenged in that area. It may be a totally different area in which they want to see themselves developed in school. So again, there's no better place to find out this very important information before we plan a program for a child than through the parents' careful collection of information about their child. It might also be important for the parents to assess what might be the hindrances that would work for or against, the hindrances that would work against a child in terms of their catalysts. Are they not motivated? Are they motivated in an area? Are they dealing with a disability? Are they dealing with a family issue right now which distracts them from learning? All those kinds of things. And likewise, an assessment of what are the child's personal strengths and characteristics that will carry them through to talent development. And having all that as kind of a record of what the child is about is a good first step for figuring out what the child should be getting both at school and at home. The second thing I would suggest, and honestly, I'm not trying to sell it, but I this called Reforming Gifted Education, matching the program to the child. And the book was written for parents, about how to put together an education plan that they could take to the school and ask for the help of the school in getting this plan carried out for their child. Parents in particular might be a very valuable resource for them. The third thing I think parents could do to assist their child's development of giftedness would be to learn how to advocate appropriately for the child's academic, social, and psychological needs with the school without putting the school on the defensive. Often parents come in and they feel so strongly about something that the administrators and the teachers may feel that they are being overly criticized for things that haven't been done for a child. So learning how to do that gently and collaboratively is an important set of skills. And there is a national organization in the United States called SENG, S-E-N-G, which stands for Supporting the Emotional Needs of the Gifted. And there is a wonderful book and a series of discussion sessions that can take place that will help train parents in how to advocate appropriately with the schools. And then the fourth thing I think parents could do to help in assisting their child's development of their gifts into talents would be to access some of the wonderful informational resources we have out there now. There are many parenting books on gifted education that are out there. And one of the most valuable publishing companies that deals with this is Free Spirit Publishing, which happens to be in my hometown of Minneapolis. There is a second publishing company that does quite a bit of this, and that is Proof Press, which comes out of Waco, Texas. Both have excellent resources for parents as well as resources for the children themselves in understanding their giftedness. Likewise, there's a wonderful website in the United States called hoagiesgifted.org, I believe. It may be .com, but I think it's .org. Which has a huge section on parent resources. And this includes competitions, online courses, books, magazines, articles, research, all that kind of thing that can help parents educate themselves about how they can best address the gifts and talents of their child. So many, many ways that parents can get themselves up to speed in terms of assisting their child develop their giftedness.